Okay, so I'm gonna try and record this again because the last time I tried recording this, it ended up being over an hour. And I ended up ranting about certain things. I started to repeat myself a lot. So, I'm gonna be talking about why I don't play this game too much no more. This is like the third or fourth time I'm recording this, so, yeah, I'm starting to get pretty annoyed. I want to stress that I stopped kind of playing this game a lot for a few reasons. One, the meta is extremely stale and extremely boring and extremely restrictive. Two, you only can use overpowered teams on a certain map, right? You only can use the best team available or you don't. Then, you got the way how everybody plays this game, which is defense. If they're on light side, defense, defense, camping, 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 camping. Dark side, it's usually offense. But let me tell you, there are people in this game who will camp with dark side. It will happen on certain maps. So, let's talk about it. We're briefly going to talk about soldiers real quick. So first, the 22 weapons in this game, there's 22. There's only 3 that are good. The E4, which is the best weapon in the game, the E3, which I think is tied because that comes down to preference, and the A280, which is also a really good weapon because it synergizes with the broken stuff just fine, particularly well with explosive shot. And then you have the stuff that goes with it. The E4 and the E3 are really good weapons by themselves, but they're not overpowered because they're really good by themselves. They're overpowered because everything that you could use with it is broken, overpowered, dumb, and brain dead. First of all, if you play a competitive pub, a private, or EC tournament in this game, which there are tournaments in this game. How I think Deathwatch is facing AT-AT. If they haven't already faced AT-AT, they're facing them sometime, I think, this month. So, the thing that you will always see, for one, Jetpack. Jetpack is insanely strong. It is the strongest thing a soldier can use in this game. It's better than power-ups, it's better than healing, it's better than even the guns, it's better than everything. You want to know why? Because the amount of offensive and defensive momentum that you get from the jetpack is so good that not using a jetpack automatically puts you at a massive disadvantage. Massive disadvantage. You can either make an offensive play by jetpacking at an opponent, and then, you got the offensive momentum on them. You could use it defensively to get into a better position, like, say, jetpack into a head glitch. Jetpack, like, on the high ground or in the low ground. That way, the opponent has to come to you no matter what, and you have that really strong position that you could abuse the hell out of. The jetpack enables you to do that. Also, it enhances certain weapons to the point where they are way better than they otherwise would be. The E4, for example, is a close to mid-range weapon, not that good in long range, but because people use it with jetpack all the time, they can jetpack towards people, completely eliminate that. They can play defensively in camp corners, and if their position is compromised, jetpack to another stronger defensive position and camp that instead. You see? They can just camp. Oh, position compromised. Jetpack away, camp. Oh, I have the offensive advantage. Jetpack at them and kill them. Then there's the trait cards. There are, I think, 7 trait cards in this game. Yeah, 7. That sounds just about right. However, only 2 of them are good. Berserker and Bodyguard. Bodyguard is absolutely ridiculous for 2 reasons. 3 reasons, actually. One, you start off with a base amount of damage reduction that you get immediately. You don't need to work towards it. You don't need to do anything. You start off with damage reduction immediately. And you, as you get more kills, or you heal more people, or you do more objectives, whatever, you gradually get more damage reduction. You hit trait 2, you get, I think, 25 to 30%. You hit trait 3, you get 50% damage reduction. So Bodyguard makes it to where it doesn't matter if your opponent shoots you first. It takes them more shots to kill you than it does you to kill them. Added to the fact that most people usually combine Bodyguard with healing items like Back to Bomb and Adrenaline Stem. Back to Bomb and Adrenaline Stem are insane. Back to Bomb is an insta-heal, which also gives you an extra 30% health. Adrenaline Stem is a passive heal that rapidly heals you over time for, I think, 8 to 10 seconds. It will consistently heal you. Any damage that you take, it will rapidly heal you. And that stacks, by the way. There are people who use Adrenaline Bacta and Bodyguard together. Then, you have Berserker, which is the opposite set of the coin. You have a card that makes it to where you take less damage. And then you have Berserker, which basically gives a gun an artificial boost without you having to do anything. So you automatically do more damage to your opponents by equipping it. It's the opposite side of the coin. If you shoot first with the E4, which already kills people extremely fast, now you have Berserker, which is one-shotting people. And even without it, you can one-shot people. So you could already baseline one-shot people with the E4, and now you're just making it to where you could do it at more range. That's what that is. And then there's the middle cards that are broken. Personal Shield's dumb. Explosive Shot's dumb. Disruption turns your gun off. You won't see that in any other game. No other game has ever done that. No other game will basically allow you to turn people's guns off. That is not a thing. It is only a thing in Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2. In Battlefront 2, only 2 characters have disruption abilities. One of them is overpowered, and the other one takes a lot of skill to use. So, there you have it. And you could use disruption whenever. And the disruption thing, like the little time window that you have to use it, that's completely eliminated if you use it with the jetpack, which you're going to use the jetpack because you need to use the jetpack because everyone else is going to use one. So you're always going to use jetpack with disruption. Therefore, you can just preemptively activate it, jetpack at somebody, and turn off their weapon. There you go. And then Scan Pulse, which means that if you have it, you basically win the gunfight before it even begins because you see people through walls, and you could call out to your team, oh, this guy's running over here. Oh, Lando Calrissian is right there. Oh, this person's right here behind that. Scan Pulse is the most brain dead thing in the game. And then you have Cooling Cell, which is basically unlimited ammo for a certain amount of time, which is also really brain dead. So, what most people do is that they put all the overpowered shit on one card set. Taken a pretty OP weapon, and now it's made into absolutely ridiculous weapon that has 0 to no counterplay to it. Because you can play really, really safe. If the guy has a strike pack, you basically lose every time. Because they always have those 2 cards either boosting their defense or their offense. They're always going to have some sort of offensive tool or defensive tool. Some people like to use Pulse Cannon and Bowcaster, which basically means if they hit it, they get an insta-kill. That's what it is. And those 2 weapons are made really good by the jetpack, to nobody's surprise, by the way. Those 2 weapons are only as good as they are because the jetpack is so insane, by the way. The Bowcaster wouldn't even be viable unless the jetpack wasn't so good. And the jetpack, by the way, it has a cooldown of 17 seconds. Not 60 seconds, not 200 seconds, 17 seconds. And the partner hand glitch, when you die, you can use the partner hand glitch to basically make it to where there is no cooldown. So you get it after you die anyway. And then there's Bounty Hunter, which you don't really want to use anything that isn't Bodyguard or Berserker because you're taking away from using Bodyguard and Berserker. Therefore, you don't have those two, and you need those two to succeed in this game. So you could see how restrictive it can be. If you're not using Bowcaster or Pulse Cannon, you could use Scattergun, which can go through shields. That's optimal. Ion Grenade, which no one really uses in HVV. So then that leaves you with Bacta and Flash. Flash is really disorienting, and Blinding Bosk is always really good. And then you have Bacta Bomb, which is insta-heal, and you give your teammates 10% health. So you could see right away that you guaranteed need to use two things. The Jetpack is the Bounty Hunter card in Battlefront 2. Bounty Hunter you need to use if you want to farm. You have to have it if you play the bigger modes. Or else you're going to get out-farmed by everyone who has it. You need it. It's this... For that, you always need the Jetpack. And then you always either need Berserker or Bodyguard. And at that point, you could use something that's overpowered with something else that's overpowered to enhance your gun however way you want. You guys can see where I'm getting at. You need broken to counter broken. You need overpowered to counter overpowered. You can't really take an in-between in this game. You need to pick one or the other. And if you don't, everybody who's going to be camping, everyone who's going to be playing really safe, everybody who's going to have all these artificial advantages over you and playing the safest way possible are going to destroy you. You have to use these items because you have no other choice. Any interesting combination that you could use without a jetpack, forget it. You need a jetpack. So, that right there is kind of one of the reasons why I don't really play this game no more. Is because you're so restricted in what you have to use that anything fun or creative that you could use is thrown out the window because you need all this other stuff to cover all your other bases. Why do that when you could use overpowered shit just to carry you? And then you have the hero side of the spectrum. And the power-ups. I'm not going to talk about the power-ups that much other than they're stupid. Thermal imploders are dumb. Sentries are dumb. The fact that it takes forever for them to kill you and they lock onto you so fast and they melt you so fast is stupid. RPGs are dumb because you just take one out and do massive amounts of damage to people or get an insta-kill. Orbitals are dumb because all of a sudden you can just pick up a win con for your team and win a round or a game that you do not deserve to win. Orbitals are bullshit. Power-ups are bullshit. I don't really need to explain why those things are dumb. Let's talk about the hero side of the spectrum. So, in Battlefront 2, Vader rules supreme in that game. Vader is so good that oftentimes a team without Vader is usually putting themselves at a bit of a disadvantage to the other team. You can win without Vader, but it's going to be a bit harder because Vader is so strong. Same thing goes for a team without an Anakin. Anakin has two tools that are really, really strong. One is a pull, and the other is retribution. Those tools are really, really good. One is an immobilize, the other one's a pull. Really good. However, you can still win without those characters, right? You don't need them in your team to absolutely win. You could win without them. This game is different. If you ever played a competitive pub, a private, a 3v3, a 6v6, competitive 3v3, 6v6, you know that realistically, most people are going to use the best team that they can use. And let's talk about that. Each team in this game that you could potentially use is influenced by two things. One, the map, and two, the other characters that everybody else is playing. Well, so let's bring up an example. Ice caves. What are the best characters in Ice Caves? Or the best team in Ice Caves? Chewbacca, Lando, Leia. You could use Luke Skywalker, but he's a bit more restricted because of his weaknesses with stuns. You don't want that. You want high damage, you want insane defensive capabilities, so usually you will see just these three in a competitive match. Camping in the caves, usually. And Lando trying to perform some flanks. That's usually what you're going to see. On the other side of the spectrum, if you're playing Ice Caves, there's realistically only two teams that you'll see. Vader, Emperor, Bosk. Vader and Emperor... I should go over this now. Chewbacca, Leia on most maps where they can camp. Maps where you could camp indoors in small hallways or small rooms, Chewbacca, Leia is guaranteed. They are guaranteed to be seen. You will always see them. You'll always see them camping. You'll always see them take a really strong defensive position. You'll always see those two characters together. This character will have 100% usage. This one will have 100% usage. On the other side of the coin, this one will have 100% usage, and guarantee that you'll see Emperor 100% usage, because the things that these two characters do are way too good to pass up. Therefore, you cannot afford to not have them on your team. And then the third one depends. Playing an open map or not playing an open map. You can play Bosk on an open map, but Boba Fett has his own advantages on open maps that really can't be ignored. That being the fact that he does extremely well against Lando at medium to close range. And the fact that he destroys Chewbacca so thoroughly in the 1v1. But he has weaknesses of his own. Loses really badly to Luke Skywalker. Loses terribly to Lando at long range. Loses really badly to camping indoors Chewie. Can lose pretty badly to Leia, and regulars can be a pain in the ass for Boba Fett. But regulars are the pain in the ass for almost every character in this game. And then there's Bosk, who is really strong defensively, really fast, has Dioxis, which is really good passive damage, really good damage of his own, and can put up a fight against pretty much every single character in this game, but he has to take a defensive stance. Taking an offensive stance against Lando usually will result in your death. Taking an offensive stance against a camping Chewie will usually result in your death. And Luke... Bosk has no stun, so you have to be a little bit careful around Luke, and his force pushes can do around 30 to 40% right off the bat. But as I said, Bosk is really good defensively. And keep in mind, just because the Imperials have a stronger offense does not mean that they can't camp. The Imperials, certain people, will camp on certain maps if they have to. Imperials will camp on Raider Camp. They will camp on Twilight of Hoth. They will sometimes even camp on Jawa Refuge. Sometimes they'll even camp on Swamp Crash, because the treehouse is so strong. Then you have Dune's Exchange, same thing. Imperial Hangar, same thing. They might just camp in the little ass room and try to chip everybody to death. And, what's another one? Rubble Depot. Sometimes Imperials will camp for the first minute to make sure that if you end up picking a character like Lando, he can't just sap like all of Vader's health at the beginning of the game. Or basically make Emperor heal early, or put Bosk in a really bad position. They will usually, Imperials will play the long game, and at that point, here are the things that need to happen, if that happens. And that's also assuming that the Rebels are doing well enough offensively, because if the Rebels are camping every time, then the Imperials aren't going to camp. They're only going to camp if the Rebels can't camp and they have to take an offensive position. If they camp, here are the two teams that you're going to see. Chewbacca, Lando, Leia, or Chewbacca, Leia, Luke. If they're feeling really offensive, Luke, Lando, Chewie. On Dark Side, realistically, there are only two teams. Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, Bosk, or Darth Vader, Emperor Boba. Those are the only 2 teams. Which is depressing because, again, that is so restrictive. There's only like 3 teams that the Rebels can use. And then there's only 2 teams that the Empire can use. Unless if you use Orson, but Orson's a really complicated character. And then it's always Rebels are going to camp on maps where they can camp, and then Rebels are going to play offensively on maps where they can't play Chewie, but those are usually maps where Lando Calrissian and Luke Skywalker are amazing anyway, and maps where Vader isn't that good. So that's the huge difference between some of these maps. There are maps where Vader isn't very good and Chewbacca isn't very good. So the character you need to stand a chance against camping and the character that you need to enable camping. And then it's abusing the fact that Lando has really insane movement and damage, and yeah, that's really what this game is. It's either abusing the fact that you can just camp indoors with Chewie, abuse the fact that certain maps aren't really good for Vader, and then just abusing the hell out of Lando and using his really insane movement to compensate. Sometimes you'll even see Lando and Han together because you'll get the lucky shot power blast combination sometimes. Like on Raider Camp and Twilight and Hoth, sometimes you'll see those 2 characters together because lucky shot power blast will completely obliterate a character's health bar. But other than that, Han Solo is usually, like, there's no reason to use Han over Lando, and there's no reason to really use Han over Leia. And then on maps where you can camp with Chewie and you can camp indoors, there's no real reason to use Han over Lando. You get the picture. Its teams are really, really restrictive in that way. Like, you are really restricted into using a very specific team, really specific characters. Even though Han Solo isn't really that good, people will just use him alongside Lando on really open maps because guess what? Vader is really slow. You have to super jump to get anywhere, and you can kind of just run in circles, and then you have to basically pick your battles. Do you want, you as Emperor and Boba Fett, do you want to go after Lando and then get lucky shotted? Do you want to go after Han and get power blasted? That's what the decision making usually comes down to. Do you want X or do you want X? And again, as I said, the Imperials can always camp if they want to. They can always camp. They don't need to deal with all this. And that's why Han isn't that good, because if the Imperials decide I want to camp today, then Han can't do anything. The Imperials need to play offensively in order for Han to be good. That's why I said that realistically there are only like 3 teams for the Rebels, and Han's not a part of any of them, because you need to have a team that's really good for defense, and you need a team that's also really good for offense in the case that the Imperials are like, we can't win offensively, let's camp. That is why this meta is so restrictive. It's so very restrictive. You really can't do anything. If you're going against a team that doesn't make any mistakes, then realistically there are only 2 teams that you could use. So that is like the sole reason why I really don't play this game, because it's not really like that in the second game. You could use like even characters that don't synergize with each other in the second game and do really well against higher level players. In this game, you can't do that. Not really. Like, if you use Nyanum in the Imperials camp, well, guess what? That's like 3 to 4 minutes of your time wasted. Every character that could potentially be good on defense is ruined by the fact that the Imperials can always either overwhelm you anyway, or they themselves decide to camp, and then it's just pointless. Right? If you use Nyanum and the Imperials are like, we just sit here and not play, and then we'll just do whatever and just chip you to death, then Nyanum, you see what I'm getting at. These characters are not good for a reason, because the Imperials could always just do X, and then these characters can't do shit. It's not like that in the second game. If they do X, then you can change your strategy even if you are limited to some capacity. In this game, you can't do that. If the Imperials camp and you have Han Solo can't post on camping Imperials, period. He loses every time. He can't do anything. Lando's even limited by that. And nine of them can't play offensively, period. His offensive capabilities are so terrible that if you play him offensively, that is tantamount to throwing the game. And then Jin's the worst character in the game. So what are you going to do? You're going to build a team that covers both your bases. You're going to build a team that is good against Imperial defense and Imperial offense in the case where they're getting overwhelmed and they can't really cut it, right? You need a team that covers both bases, which means don't use Han Solo. That's basically what that means. So most teams, if we're not including Luke, Lando, Chewbacca, because that's hyper offense, and you do have to sacrifice the fact that you are not playing Leia, that is something that is pretty significant in some way, because you're not getting the armor for Leia, you aren't getting health from Leia, you have to rely on board health, and you don't get the honor guards. That's a pretty big deal too. So there is a cost of using that team. And if you don't use that team, realistically you're limited to camp on indoor map team and camp on outside map team. It sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, I know. And even then, you don't have to really use Lando. You could go Luke, Leia, Chewie, which is just as good. It's just replacing Lando with Luke, right? But Luke has benefits of his own. Again, Rebels have a bit more potential with teams, right? It really depends on the squad you're playing against. But again, they're realistically only going to use one or two teams. And that's depending on the map. Say you're playing on Imperial Station, the only team that you'll see is Leia, Lando, Chewie. You spawn in a camping spot? Use the camping team, boys. No reason not to. And then on the other side of the coin, Vader, Emperor, Bosk. Every game, no reason not to. And like I said, this is under the assumption that either side can camp, and that is probably the main reason why I don't like this game. The defense is so good, in combination with like the randomness from power-ups, the fact that like a thermal detonator or a rocket launcher can decide a game is ridiculous. Then you add on to the fact that there's other randomness to it. There's the fact that board healths can decide if you win. There's the fact that like some games come down to which side is like stalling out each other, because you'll have games where one side is basically waiting for board health and the other side is waiting for a board health, and it comes down to if the board health spawns on top of on the Rebels or the Imperials. That's what games sometimes come down to, and that sounds incredibly boring and ridiculous, and that's because it is. That's what this game is. Sometimes. And it's really boring. And it's all because defense is so strong. That's why I really don't play this game no more. Defense is so stupid. Yeah, you could just get away with some of the dumbest bullshit as Rebels. And even Imperials will fucking camp and play defensively. And then there's certain times where you can't even play offensively, where you're forced to camp, and I hate that. I hate the fact that sometimes you are forced to camp, period. It's stupid. The freedom as a player, especially one who likes playing offensively, is taken away from me because this team is broken on offense, therefore you can't touch it. It's stupid. I hate it. I hate the fact that there's a randomness factor to it as well, which could potentially completely either ruin a game for you or your opponent. The fact that Chewbacca beats every single character while camping indoors. The fact that Lando with Chewie is also really, really insane as well. The fact that Lando has insane movement, cloaks off the map, disrupts characters, also does ridiculous damage of his own, turns off abilities. Chewbacca beats every character in the 1v1 in closed doors. No one can beat him except Vader, by the way. You have to chip Chewbacca to death to do anything, and even then, Bosk has to run away, Emperor has to run away, every character has to run away. From Chewbacca. You can't commit to Chewbacca or you die. And that just goes to show how strong he is offensively. So, but I think I'm done talking about this because I've been sitting here for like 3 or 4 hours now trying to make a video. And yeah, I'm just kind of done with this game for a while. As I said, meta is super boring. It just comes down to, is your defense strong enough to deal with Imperial's offense? And if the Imperials don't, then the Imperials might camp, and then the game becomes extremely boring. Or both sides play in a really extremely boring way, and it's just like, what the fuck is the point? And then some matches are just decided before it even like starts. Because I'm not even getting into pubs and how incompetently bad the randoms are. So you guys already know what the deal is. So yeah, and that's gonna be it from me. I might make more videos like this, ranting about the first game in different ways, but yeah. I'm kind of sick of defense. I'm kind of sick of how boring this game has gotten. It's kind of weird to me that the people who talk shit the most are the ones that know how broken defense is. And know the fact that they can just abuse it with Rebels every single time. And the fact that even sometimes they'll even go as far as camping with Imperials. So, yeah, I don't think this game is really interesting anymore. I don't find it fun. It's really boring when I go against good players because they always camp with light side usually, or on the maps where they can't do that. You know, it's the same shit every time, and even if I do win, it's not a satisfying win. And usually I do win, but still, it's annoying. It's not satisfying gameplay at all. It's just more of the same, and it just gets boring after a while. So I probably will not play this game for a while. I'll only usually play it if Legion Spirals is on, but yeah, that's gonna be it from me. I expect that I start streaming Battlefront 2 a bit more, making more Battlefront 2 videos, and maybe some other videos of other games, because this shit is getting really, really boring for me.